So what have we done so far? Over the last 4 weeks, I've been fairly deliberate in going a little slow and looking at the fundamentals of uh, organization change. So over the last 4 weeks, we've looked at everything from the definition to the different components within the organization that can be changed, uh, why organizations should change or they change, when organizations should change, the different types of change. uh, we've also looked at a few tools. One is, assessing the readiness for organization change, and also if it's time for the organization to change. We've looked at organization culture and structure, and also the individual responses or reactions that one might have to change. Last week, we spent some time looking at Kurt Lewin's model for individual change. Today, we will continue with that and do something else as well. All right, so this is what we've done so far. So today, we'll jump straight ahead and uh, one wrap up Kurt Lewin's model for individual change, and also look at another model for organization change, which was put forward by this management professor John P. Cotter. He's the one that you will find in the reading that has been assigned to you by the program, the organization change management guide, leadership guide. You will find this particular model in that document. In fact, you should be reading that document uh, to ensure that you're up to speed on what is going on. Okay, so if you recall, last week I'd said the Kurt Lewin's model has three stages: uh, unfreezing, changing, and refreezing. Basically, it is unfreezing whatever old habits, old behaviors, old culture, old ways of thinking, old attitudes, unfreezing that first, and then changing by learning new things, new ways of looking at business, the world, the work we do, uh, learning new behaviors, learning to have new perspectives and attitudes. So that's the changing phase. And then you have the refreezing, or the phase, the stage after the changing, where you reinforce the changed behaviors and allow that to crystallize and become the new set of behaviors, the new norms, or the new ways of doing things in the organization. So, one of the analogies that I had used last week, if you remember, was that of an ice cube. So think of the unfreezing as the melting or the thawing of the ice cube, right? So ice cube at the moment is just water. Now, if we need to add something to it, you do it by thawing the ice, convert it into liquid form. You add whatever flavor you want. So if you want to make the colorless or white ice cube into something orange or red, you put a certain coloring, or you put a certain flavor. So if I want to make an orange candy out of it, I put some orange flavored mix into it, stir it up, and then I refreeze it to make it a candy, right? So if you can remember this analogy, you'll remember the Kurt Lewin's model. The old ways is the ice cube, the changing is the process of thawing and adding the new color and flavor. And if you want, at this stage, you can even add a stick to it, right, into the ice cube, so that you can hold the ice candy when it is frozen. And then the third stage of refreezing in order to have your new version of the ice cube. All right, so broadly, these are the three stages. And one of the things I had mentioned last week was this is a fairly elegant model or a framework simply because it has very few things for you to remember, right? And if you can conceptually understand these three stages, you will learn when we look at John Cotter's model that a lot of the things about uh, change can be understood by just these three stages. We looked at this last week. I'm just kind of refreshing your memory. The first stage of unfreezing basically involves two large steps. One is you have to create the motivation or the need for change, right? So nobody is going to change just because somebody else told you to change. They're not going to do that. You have to create the need for a change. So as a change manager or a change leader or someone who's concerned about the state of the your organization, you will have to create the need for change in the people you want to change, right? Even if you think about your own self, we change when we feel the need to change. Otherwise, we are very happy doing our own thing and letting each day just go by. So first stage is to create the need for change, and the second step in the same stage of unfreezing is that as a manager or a leader, you'll have to create a psychological safety net, right? In order to reduce anxiety, people are always going to feel unsure about what is going on. They may feel unsettled whenever they encounter change. So it becomes incumbent on the change leader or change manager to provide some psychological security, some create the atmosphere or make it conducive for people to learn. Now, just to look at a little more detail in these two stages, unsettle what is the current state. So, in our ice cube analogy, the unsettling is introducing heat, right? Heat is the external stimulus you provide in order to start melting the ice. So, the status quo needs to be disconfirmed. So, you will have to change the status quo. Only then will that need for change arise in a person. It's only when the ice cubes realizes that, hey, I'm melting because of the addition of heat, it sees that, oh, something is going on over here. So something similar has to be done with people in organizations as well, which is that the status quo needs to be disconfirmed. At the same time, what has to happen is, to what extent should the status quo be unsettled, should be changed. It should be changed to such an extent where the need for survival or survival anxiety, as you see on the screen, the need for survival should exceed any fear I might have about learning something new, right? So for example, I am afraid of falling off from a motorbike, and so I don't ride a motorbike. But if I get a job that requires me to have a motorbike or a motorcycle, the need for survival, the need for employment, the need for earning a paycheck is greater than any fear I might have of falling off from the motorcycle and maybe fracturing an arm or a leg. So that is the extent to which the status quo needs to be unsettled in order to create that motivation or the need for change. That's the first step in unfreezing. How can you disconfirm? You can do that in a very logical, rational manner by presenting people with data and facts by showing them, hey, what is our current state of affairs? What is the competition looking like? What is the external market like? What kind of future are we going to be seeing? Whether we will survive in the marketplace of the future with the current capabilities that we have, right? So you can show them some difference between what is required and what is the existing state of affairs. You can highlight some aspects of dissatisfaction that they have in the job, uh, in terms of maybe the profile, the job profile, the work culture, the products that they're working with, the paycheck, any of those things. And if none of them work, you can even escalate it by presenting them with certain threats of a legal nature or a political nature or of a technological nature, as in, hey, we are introducing this new type of technology or machinery in the organization. If you don't train yourself to use that particular technology or machinery, sadly we will have to let you go, right? So that usually sets up the stage where people start thinking about the need for survival, right? If I don't learn this, if I don't go to this training program, learn something about how to work this new machine, then I won't have a job. So that need for survival then will trigger the change effort. So yeah, similar things that I've talked about, which is threats, and then also this fear that I'm going to become incompetent because I don't know how to use this machine, loss of employment, maybe a demotion will lead to a loss of personal identity or losing some group membership. The second one is to create psychological safety. You do that by, you know, providing some positive, compelling vision, allowing people to train themselves, improve their competence. Because as you improve competence, you also become more confident. And when you're confident, you have a general feeling of positiveness in you. You can also provide coaches. You can provide short projects where people can learn, make mistakes and learn. Also make sure that there are some positive role models available within the organization who can provide some inspiration to people as they start this change process, right? uh, Set up some support groups, and also ensure that the systems and processes that you have within the organization are consistent with whatever change you're asking people to do. One of the things that you will learn, if you have not learned already, is that when people go for training programs, right? So they go for a 5-day retreat, 5-day workshop, 5-day training program, or even if it's a 1-day training program, the people who've gone for this training have undergone certain change, right? So they have learned some new information, their perspective has probably changed. They come back with great energy, but they come back to the same organization that they left 5 days ago. The manager is the same, the colleagues are the same. They don't have the benefit of the new learning that you have gone through as a person who attended a training program. Now, what happens is you come back, and whatever you've learned, you forget fairly quickly. Within a day or so, you're back to where you started 5 days ago, because the systems and the processes that you're returning to are not synchronized with the new learning that you have acquired in this workshop, right? So when you talk about creating psychological safety as a change leader, change manager, it becomes part of your responsibility to ensure that the environment is also conducive for making this change happen. All right, so that is the first stage of unfreezing. We also looked at individual responses. If you recall, 2 weeks ago and even last week, we talked about What are the different ways in which people can respond to change. We spent quite a bit of time looking at the Vishik framework of the turtle, the lion, the hawk, the deer, and the elephant. And I'd also mentioned that you can use this as an inspiration to add your own animals that might better capture some features or some aspects of how people respond to change. Another framework that allows us to understand individual response to change is Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's work, which led to her identifying 5 stages that people go through when they encounter a drastic change. Her work was in the field of working with people with terminal illnesses, terminal diseases, but that same framework has great application even in the field of organization change or individual change. So whenever individuals encounter a huge change, they go through, you know, these 5 stages. There are no, set time intervals between each of these stages. People can go from shock and denial to acceptance fairly quickly, depending on how well they're able to cope with what is going on. Or some people, can get stuck at any one of those stages and never be able to move forward, right? So we talked about this last week. We also looked at this particular table, which is there in that change management leadership guide, uh, which gives you some useful and helpful tips on how to deal with employee reaction of each of these 5 different kinds. Okay, so this is where we stopped last week. And what I'd like to do now is to just pause a bit and see if you have any questions that I can address. Feel free to unmute yourself and post the question, share the question, or you can also, you know, send a message on the chat. Are there no questions, or do we have people still in
Can you,
class? Yes.
can you just
Yes.
share some light on the kind of responses that are mentioned here, and
Okay.
how a manager or why a manager should choose that kind of response? Just throwing a light on that so that we can understand better.
Okay. So let's look at the first one, denial. Okay. So what does denial mean? Living in denial, uh, or so. For example, you walk into the your company one day, and then you're informed that your department has been relocated, right? Has been relocated from whatever your current location is to another office that is 25 kilometers away. And that in the process of relocation, they have decided to let go of 50% of the employees, because the new location has only has some new uh, you know uh, productivity improving technology in place. And all the people from your department will not be required. Only 50% are required to get work done in the new place. So your immediate reaction to that is, what the hell is this? It can't be. They can't do that without giving us prior information. You can't spring a surprise like this without letting us know, without preparing us, or without any intimation of any kind, right? So the immediate this one is, you are you're not able to believe this new thing that has happened. right? So the new event that has happened where you're told to move 25 kilometers away, and hey, by the way, you have a 50% chance that you may not be part of the team that is going to this new location. So it's that shock can lead you to numbness. It can, you think I've maybe made a mistake. People, I've misheard what is going on. Maybe if I just sit quietly, the correct information will come down, and it'll be that this was all an April Fool's joke, right? So, initial reaction to such a drastic announcement is denial. The manager's response at the time would be, you know, hey, what I'm telling you is for real, and I can show you some a memo that I've received from the top management team, or a circular that the HR department has probably circulated. And then I give them some time to uh, process this particular information that they've received. And then if I have the information, I can tell them that, who is selected and who is not selected, right? So that would be your first stage. Does that make sense?
Yeah, got that.
Okay. Now again, if I just have to take that example, to the next step, it would be like, anger, the denial after denial. Once I realize this is for real, when the manager shows me that memo that says X number of people, and this is the list of 25 people who will go to the new location, and my name is missing from there, I'm going to be angry. Angry that I've lost my job, uh, and I don't know what to do. Or I have been selected to go to this new place, but hey, it is inconvenient. It's 25 kilometers away. I already live 25 kilometers on one side from my current location. So a 25-kilometer relocation to the new place would mean I have to commute 50 kilometers one way, right? So I'm angry that I was not informed of all of these things. And so I try and start blaming the manager who gave me this message, right? So shoot the messenger. Or in a fit, I kind of withdraw from the team, or I try and kind of call up some uncle who's a politician to see if I can reverse this change. Things that I would do in anger. So the manager's response is, uh, the standard. This one is to say that it came from the top management, because there is another level above me that has made this decision, that I was not party to it. So, but I do recognize and acknowledge your anger and what you're feeling, because I'm also feeling. I also have similar feelings, because it is an inconvenience for everyone. Inconvenience being the milder version of the thing. For others, it could be a pretty drastic one, especially if they have to lose their job. And so, anger, sometimes that anger can subside within the afternoon. Sometimes it can take days, depending on the severity of how I'm going to be impacted by this change. Then I do some bargaining, uh, like try and cut a deal, see if I can talk to some higher up to say to make sure that I can get a transfer to some other department or another wing within that same location. So say, hey, I have this particular skill set. I know I am in this particular, with this job profile now, or this job role. Maybe I can do this because I can't leave my current location for whatever reason. So I bargain and see, if I can cut some kind of a deal for myself. So the manager's response is, again, going back and trying to see if one, if you can accommodate the request that is being made. If the request cannot be accommodated, then you provide more information about how this change is beneficial, or give some more information on why this change had to happen, and so on. If the bargaining also does not work, then I go through a period of depression, right? Again, this depression can last anywhere from a few minutes to days and years in some cases, right? Uh, so depression, I go into this stage, uh, or this is a response I have when I feel a sense of loss of control, right? So I don't feel up to it in this particular workplace. There's no sense of belongingness, and so I stopped skipping work. I slow things down. I'm not fully engaged in my work, and it starts impacting my work and the productivity as well. So the manager should be able to recognize this, and again try and provide some psychological support to the person to help them deal with this response of depression. Okay. uh, One is that they can provide some specific next steps that will follow. So if you can clarify how this whole change process will work out, where the employee can see himself or herself in the future, that can help them overcome or cope with this particular response. And then finally, you come to this acceptance to say, like, hey, I can't change what has happened. It's up to me to kind of figure out what I have to do to deal with this change. If it means that I leave this current residence that I'm in and move to a place that is closer to my new workplace, right? So I'll have to start thinking of making all those different arrangements. Okay. And so broadly, these are the 5 stages. For conceptual clarity, they are listed in this order: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. There is no set time intervals between each of these stages. You can go from receiving the news to acceptance fairly quickly, or you can get stuck in any of these stages for long periods of time. Any questions?
Sir, that was great, sir. At least having a different kind of a perspective from your side, I could relate that how people really fall under all these categories whenever there is a change that is initiated, and what should be the response, and how a person should try to respond to those situations. Also, bit clear, sir. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Very good. Okay, so let's continue. So, what are the things we need to understand about the response to change? Is to look at this thing of aspect of resistance to change. Why do people resist change, or why do we resist change? We all are familiar with inertia, right? Newton's, I think, first law of motion, which is an object continues to stay in its path of motion until it is stopped by an external force. So we have certain inertia. We are used to a certain way of doing something, and we like this way of doing things because it is predictable. We feel in control. We have everything in place. Suddenly, if there is a change, we push back simply physically, because of inertia, but also psychologically, or from a cognitive standpoint, because we feel a sense of loss of control. Essentially, that is what the thing of change happens, is because you feel that you're not in control, or that you fear the unknown. Fear the unknown simply means that you don't know what the steps, next stage, what tomorrow will look like. So you're uncertain. And that fear, that uncertainty, this experience of loss can make us kind of take a stand that resists going along with any change, right? And resistance can be of various kinds. The big ones are, it's blind resistance. I don't have any information, so I blindly kind of, say no, because that's my first response without having any information about what the change is about. The second, it could be political, or it could be for ideological reasons. I am ideologically opposed to a certain perspective, or I have certain political beliefs, and if uh, this particular change pushes me to having to move to another side, you know for political or ideological reasons, I can push back and resist change. So, in that change management guide that I've been referring to several times, there is this particular segment uh, called the three phases of transitions, right? So, when uh, individuals face a change event, how do they transition from their current state to the new state that is required by the organization? So William Bridges came up with a three phase transition. We are calling it a transition simply because it's a process. It's not a clean step by step sort of movement. It's a transition from uh, learning about the change and then going through this the three to the phase where you accept and you start behaving and living a different life, or different work habits, different work behaviors, and so on. So the three phases are: the first phase where you're ending the current state, uh, you're letting go of your old behaviors, you move to a stage where you're learning the new behaviors, you're practicing them. The remnants, the residue of the old phase is still there, and once you become more proficient, you then move to the new stage, which over here is called the new beginning. So one thing you will see if you notice this particular figure is that time is on the x-axis. Some people can take a long time to move out of the first phase itself, whereas there might be others who are able to make that transition fairly quickly, right? So they're able to move on from stage one, phase one, to the next phase fairly quickly, similar to the Kubler-Ross's five stages framework we talked about. People can get stuck in denial for a long time and not move to the next stage of anger. Similarly, over here. Again, so this is straight away from that particular management guide. Uh, I was very reluctant to actually, you know, do this in very much detail, because there's a lot of repetition in what we have already talked about uh, with regard to response to change. But I've just put this up on the screen so that you can make a note to go and read this up, right? It's fairly self-explanatory because we've already looked at these ideas before. Okay, so stage one, ending, losing, and letting go. Uh, yeah, we've talked about that. The transition phase from the old and the new, and the new beginning, where new behaviors, new energy, new identity, and a different sense of purpose is set in. So what I would suggest that you do is go and relook this segment from that management guide. All right, so this was the stage one of Kurt Lewin's model for individual change, which is the unfreezing stage. And then you have the changing, where you learn the new concepts. In our ice cube analogy, this is where the ice has melted and become liquid now. Now, this is where you add the color, the flavor, uh, and also if you want to add anything else to that mix, right, in order to make it uh, different, in order to make it new. So two ways in which you know you can change. One is you identify with or you imitate some role model, right? So the organization provides certain role models who stand out for the kind of behaviors, the kind of attitudes, the kind of competence one needs to have in order to be able to survive or thrive in the workplace or the organization of tomorrow, right? So you look at some role models and you start learning from them, right? So what do they do, how do they live, how do they work, what are their tips for success? You learn from them. uh, the other way is to scan the environment for solutions and learn by trial and error, right? So you see what is around and learn by trial and error. Each of them, they have their advantages. How can you do the first one? You provide some training material, you put people through certain projects, some plays, some simulations, some role plays, uh, you know get them to understand what the new behavior, attitude, or knowledge that is required of them. uh, Through any of these methods, in the trial and error or scanning the environment option is where people work out their own solution. So you give the problem and you maybe provide certain support structures where you tell people in your organizations, hey, in order to help you understand or deal with this change, this is a handbook or a toolkit that has been provided for you to go and pick and choose what works for you, so that you can learn quickly and adopt the new behaviors that we want from you, or the new ways of thinking we want from you. Okay, so changing by learning new concepts is the second stage. Third stage is refreezing. Basically, this is where you crystallize or you uh, allow the new behaviors to set in and become the norm. So first thing is you internalize new concepts by reinforcing new behaviors. So you reinforce new behaviors by maybe changing the rewards and recognition system in your organization. What is the incentive one has? So if people change their behavior, and which we would can include anything like become proficient in learning a new technology, or becoming skilled in operating a new machinery, or becoming competent to do certain additional tasks. All of that can be reinforced either through monetary or non-monetary recognition systems. And then the new learning becomes stable if it kind of is in sync with their personality, right? So if there's too much cognitive dissonance or incongruence between the new behavior and the personality of the individual, then that is going to be a problem. So which is why you will see a lot of people who drop out of certain after some change is initiated, because they are simply not able to learn or cope with the change. uh, and also it becomes stable if it meets expectation of important people in the organization, right? So if I'm getting reinforcement or recognition from people who I consider important in the organization, then the new behaviors start becoming the natural way in which I will do things. Okay, so these are the three stages of Kurt Lewin's model for individual change. Let me pause for a bit and see if you have any questions.
Sir, I am okay with it, sir. Got that.
Okay, all right. Thank you for the feedback. Let's move on. So, one model for individual change was Kurt Lewin's model that we've just looked at. If you recall, last week I said, and I mentioned it earlier in this session as well, is that the Kurt Lewin's model, although while it was designed for or developed for individual change, to understand individual change, with a little bit of reflection, you can also extend it to organizational change as well, right? So uh, we will see how that kind of works out in this next model, which is John Cotter's model of change. It's an 8-step process, which again has been covered in some detail in the change management guide that you have. I strongly suggest that you read it up so that uh, you know what it is talking about. In today's session, I'm just going to, look at the overview and address any questions you might have to improve conceptual understanding of this particular model. All right. So the 8 stages, reading from bottom to top, they're nicely color coded as well: blue, green, and red. I just mentioned that with a little reflection, you can see how Kurt Lewin's 3-stage model can be applied to the organization level change as well. And Cotter's model, whether consciously or unconsciously, seems to kind of you know capture that particular 3-stage categorization. So the first one, which is the bottom half of the 3 stages: create urgency, form a powerful coalition, create a vision for change, or also called creating the climate for change, is analogous to the unfreezing stage, where we said you need to disconfirm the status quo and also provide psychological safety. Okay. The second stage of learning is where you communicate the vision, empower action, create new wins, which is enabling and engaging the organization. The third one is implementing and sustaining change, which is where you refreeze the change that is taking place, build on the change and stick it, make it stick. So these are the 8 stages. We'll look at them, one by one in a little bit. This is another way to look at it. Create, establish. This is the first stage. Create the urgency, build uh, a team, uh, have a vision and a strategy. Okay, so let's kind of just look at this in a little directly. We look at the details so that I can avoid repeating what is over here. Okay, so the takeaway from this particular, image is this: that John Cotter's model has 8 steps, and you can simplify it in your mind if you can remember Kurt Lewin's 3-stage model, which is unfreezing, changing, and refreezing. Put three steps each, and the last 2 steps into the refreezing stage. All right, the first stage, which is creating a sense of urgency. Okay, so one of the things is we've been saying that you have to unsettle people and make them be unhappy or dissatisfied with the current state of affairs. Only then will we change, or we be motivated to change. So this increasing urgency step one is in that line, which is you have to make people feel that there is a great need and an urgency for this change thing to happen. Otherwise, I'm going to be content or complacent with the current state. Yes, I was told that I need to change, but I don't see, the heavens have not fallen down, business is doing well. Why should I do it? Right? Yes, I will attend to the change initiative when I have time. You know, to make people get out of that particular frame of mind, you have to unsettle people. So, how do you do that? You know, okay, so over here it says what works is you create a compelling vision, uh, and make them kind of push them out of complacency. You can also draw lessons from the unfreezing stage in Kurt Lewin's model, where we talked about uh, providing the gap analysis between the current state and the desired state. You can use threats if required, right? uh, what does not work? Focusing exclusively on the rational business case. So one of the things we have to remember in any change process is that people's feelings and perspectives have to be recognized, right? Have to be recognized and dealt with if you need to successfully get buy-in from them. If we
Ted,
ignore, yes,
Arpita here. This reminds me of actually a live case that I'm encountering. If you are aware, there are certain changes in the labor code happening,
right,
wage code, and there's a roaring debate now that net take-home salaries will reduce because security will increase. So
correct.
there are we are actually as HR facing this already because the fear and insecurity has increased amongst the team, and they're coming up with these YouTube links and articles and papers, and is it true, are we going to bear the brunt next year? So this is the first step that I can see coming in, the fear, the anxiety, and we are trying to pacify them and asking them to hang on till we give the best solution. But this is something which is really boiling over at the moment.
Yes, very good. Point you make. The new wage code, the changes in the wage code
Yeah.
have unsettled people, uh, with certain limitations being placed on allowances, and
Hmm.
you know there's the need for increasing the basic pay because of whatever, right? And
Right.
companies are going to be reluctant to increase the basic pay because your basic pay is the determines a lot of other benefits
Right.
also,
Right.
right? So because of the cascading effect of that, organizations will be reluctant to increase basic pay, but
Mhm.
uh, people are also worried about take home pay. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
So yes, I it's a good live case that you've brought up.
Mhm.
uh, so which means over here, uh, purely giving them rational information about, hey, this is the legal state, is not going to be
Mhm.
sufficient.
Right.
Okay, while it is the one of the first things you will do is, hey, this is out of my control, this is the law of the land, is one thing. The other one is you'll have to acknowledge that they have feelings as well, feelings of anxiety, fear, you know apprehensions about how they will make ends meet if
Mhm.
their pay falls short, and all those things. So you'll have to uh, address that feeling in one way or the other, right?
Right.
Yeah, okay. uh, so the first stage, so coming back to our slide over here, so the first stage is people have to feel a sense of urgency that I need to change. So let me take myself for example. Okay, for the longest time I have been trying to reduce weight. Okay, reduce weight, and I've been putting it off, saying, yeah, I'm kind of active, I can do X, Y, and Z. So what is the great need to change now? One of the things that has happened in this lockdown is because movement has been limited, you know uh, and activity has been limited. uh, the weight, the increase has been a little more faster than I would have been happy with, which means a lot of my clothes don't fit anymore, right? So the urgency to reduce weight now has suddenly increased. Maybe a year ago, I was a little complacent about it, but now one is either I go and buy a full set of new clothes, or I reduce weight and save the all the clothes that I have now. It's a silly example to give, but I'm just trying to highlight uh, where and how the sense of urgency needs to be felt by a person in order for change to happen, right? A more extreme one would be where suddenly a person has a heart attack and the doctor says, hey, you have to give up no fried food, no oily food, uh, cut down on certain types of foods. You only have to eat certain types of foods, get more exercise, take these medications. That is a sense of urgency. Suddenly, like, you no longer can your status quo of eating whatever you want no longer is valid, right? So the first stage is to increase that sense of urgency, which is the earlier point we've been saying under Lewin's model of disconfirming or unsettling and changing the status quo. The second one is building a guiding team. All right, so at this stage, let me just go back a step. When we talk about change, maybe it'll be helpful if I we can work with an example in mind, right? Uh, so let me do something. Let me give you 30 seconds to think of any uh, organization-wide change that you're currently facing, or you think you want to initiate. Share with us what kind of change that is, and we'll see if we can use that as a live example to walk through all these different steps. Maybe that will make it more uh, meaningful for you, rather than me only giving you some conceptual ideas about it. So I'll give you 30 seconds, think about it, either unmute yourself and share with us, or you can chat.
Another thing, Ted, that comes to mind is the unlockdown thing, the reopening. And while a few have started coming, there is anxiety from quite a few to come back to office for health reasons. So that could be one, that how to get them back, where it is required when we are opening. There are resistance to coming back to office.
Okay, so that is one type of change that one can deal with. Okay, is there anything else others have?
So can you repeat the precise question, sir, once again?
So the question is, this one is, uh, in looking at these in looking at John Cotter's 8-stage model, right? So one thing is I can look at each step and talk to you about the concepts of it. Okay. Uh, Another way is, if you can give me a change management challenge, right, that you're facing, I can help you apply this 8-stage model to that particular problem that you have. So Arpita just mentioned, well, we have this problem of where because of this unlockdown, we need to get people back to the workplaces, but some of the employees are reluctant to come back to the workplace for safety and health reasons, right? So that is one case that we can you work on.
So I have a very interesting one which I have shared with you already, sir.
Okay, tell me, please
It
remind me again.
Yes, sir. It is an organization which is dealing with the health cardiology related issues in the
Hmm,
patients,
hmm,
detecting the kind of heart failures or any heart related issues
hmm,
using a medical grade device, which
hmm,
is kind of a service, a home service kind of a thing. Anybody can get it hooked up anywhere in and around India or all over the world,
hmm,
and the data will be monitored remotely,
hmm,
online,
hmm,
real time,
hmm,
and even if there is any kind of disturbance in the heart
Hmm.
rhythm of the
Hmm.
patient, it will be notified, it will be taken up and reported on a continuous basis or a daily cumulative, like that. We have a number of things in that. Okay, this is the
Hmm.
work that we do. Okay,
Hmm. Okay.
organization consists of just four people who are working in the kind of entire pan India.
Hmm.
Two are two are directors and two are regional managers. Okay,
Okay.
one regional manager, that is me in north, based at Delhi. Second one is in south, that is Chennai. Okay,
Hmm. Hmm.
so in this scenario, the major challenge is that when we do the home monitoring or remote monitoring kind of a things, nowadays it is becoming more and more popular,
Hmm.
because though the technology was there earlier, it was not that much used. Now, due to this lockdown scenario, now everybody wants to have a consultation with the doctor, get checked up and everything, but they do not want to go to the hospitals.
Hmm.
Okay. So now the business is more interesting, challenging. Now you can get more number of patients, more number of monitorings done. But the problem is that the mindset of the people, uh, though
Mindset of the
they want
customers
to,
or the employees?
no, the company, I can say the company or vision, mission, or how to expand. Because the
Okay.
two directors that I see, if I am in their place, I would have grown the business like anything by recruiting more number of people in and around the states wherein they can take care of each and every hospital. Okay.
Okay.
Other hand, the model that they are working upon is that managing with more number of distributors in and around every state, so that
Okay.
more number of distributors, more number of channel, more number of people to facilitate and do the job that is required. But the
Okay.
major question remains unaddressed, and the question is that who will convey the benefits of the system, the usage, the entire marketing aspect to the customers?
Hmm.
Will it be done by a logistic person or distributor person who is not competent or not having the capability of converting a doctor or convincing a doctor of using the latest technology by paying a price for it? Or is it that the company should go ahead by appointing more number of marketing people or sales people who can convince the customers and upgrade them on that? Because holters are very long time thing that is available in the market. To change or to bring a change in the market, in the customer mindset, it requires a skill set, sales skill set, and a marketing thing. For that matter, what challenge I face is that these directors are not ready to accept that we want to have more number of people or we want to have more number of marketing activities. They do not want to spare penny on that, because nowadays lockdown had taught us a lot of lessons on how to reduce the expenditure. So in
Okay.
this kind of scenario, it is a real challenge for me also to convince them or make them understand that marketing needs to be boosted up, so that sales will also be boosted up. So this is what problem I am facing. How you can help me out or you can solve it, it's up to you now, sir.
My friend Jamie, it's okay. It's a little. I, I
Yeah,
I broadly get what you're saying.
yeah,
Okay, uh, but it is going to be a challenge to give you a solution within
yeah,
the time frame that we have.
yeah, yeah.
Okay,
I agree, sir.
uh,
I agree.
but what we can do is help you think about the problem, right?
Yeah,
Help you clarify the problem so that you're able to generate your own solutions.
yeah,
In the A lot of the things in the way you've described or you framed the problem probably gives you some indication of how to solve the problem. Okay.
yes.
Uh, so the first step, and I think I can. Is there anyone else who has another problem that they would like to share? We have Arpita and Ajay Kumar who have shared their issues. Let's see, who else do we have in class? We have Ashish, Neelam, and Abhay. Do you folks have anything you'd like to share with us? Or I can just, try and use these two problems itself.
Yeah, Ted, Neelam here.
Yes.
You,
Hi, Neelam.
hi, hi. So usually in my company, I'm talking about my company, whenever there is a new system which is launched,
Hmm.
you know, the employees are very hesitant to work on those, new systems, and they don't want a new application to come. They're very, comfortable with the old applications, and they always have an adverse, reaction to any new applications that tend to come in, which is actually for their betterment, but they are always hesitant. This is something I've seen in my operations at least. So,
Acha, could you tell us a little more about what kind of system
yeah,
you have that they're
okay.
apprehensive about? Yeah.
Yes. So basically, for one, I can give you an example. I was working in clearance department. I was the team leader there. So we had a very outdated system wherein it was called air cargo automation system, wherein you would do entries whenever the shipments used to arrive. We used to get a lot of detentions, and we had to feed in the reason for detention in those particular systems, and that did not have any visibility. Suppose you are not able to enter your name, or you have not entered the data for that particular ever bill, nobody would know exactly that case is with which person. So there was not enough visibility, but then they created something much better, so there is visibility, and they would show that, okay, this person was assigned this particular case and he's responsible for it. So that visibility was definitely there, but the employees were very hesitant to work on the new. They would come up with all complaints: I'm not liking this, there's too much to do, etc., etc. So they were very comfortable with the old application. So this is,
Right.
there were many other features. I don't think you would be able to
No,
relate
I
to them.
think this is good enough. I mean, you've given us a sense of the the issue
Yes,
that is there. Uh,
right.
okay, so let's see if we can kind of look at all of these three problems that you've shared, and maybe use one or the other when we look at each of these steps. So let me go back to the first step. All right. So increasing the urgency for change. Now, if we look at Arpita's problem of bringing back people to the workplace, right? If your workplace requires a certain number of people to be physically present in the office, then you start building the case for that. Uh, and if people who are reluctant to come back to the workplace, if the reluctance is in terms of health and safety concerns, but they're also required to be physically present in the office, then the urgency is created when you can tell them that work from home is not sustainable anymore, right? So work from home was a stopgap temporary measure in order to deal with the COVID situation, but it can't be a permanent feature because the nature of the job or the nature of the role does not lend itself for a permanent conversion to work from home. So which means, again, go back to uh, the Kurt Lewin's disconfirming status quo, and also if you look at urgency over here, you say, like, what is the business case, right? And also, what are the apprehensions? Why are they feeling that safety and health will not be addressed when they come back to the office? So which means the company will have to put in certain measures to reassure them that health and safety will concerns will be taken care of, right? So if that is done, then they come back to the workplace. If they don't come back to the workplace, then they face the risk of having to be let go from the company because their particular role does not lend itself to work from home. So that creates a sense of urgency in the people who are reluctant to come back to the office, to start making certain adjustments within themselves, from a psychological standpoint. How do they start coping with this new requirement, and also any other logistical adjustments they will have to make in order to come back to the workplace. Uh, with Ajay's situation, again, there seems to be some difference in terms of how soon the business can be scaled up by different groups of people, right? So the perspectives that people have. Ajay said that he could kind of increase, the market share or revenues fairly quickly by hiring people from outside, but the top management or the other managers are reluctant uh, to spend money simply because the lessons that they learned from the lockdown is slightly different, right? So in that case, again, how do you create urgency for change? The urgency for change is created by looking at what would the course of your organization be, or the path that your organization would take if it did not change, right? If it did not change, what would happen? At this point, you probably want to recall the chart that we looked at about when organizations should change, right? We said organizations see a rapid growth, and then if they don't make any changes, they plateau and then start declining. So this is maybe something that you can share with your managers to say, like, hey, if you don't listen to the strategy or the vision that I'm kind of talking about in terms of how you can increase the business, then over time, doing whatever you're doing currently will only lead to stagnation and eventual decline, right? So you have to unsettle their thinking. You have to create that urgency for change. And the third one was Neelam's point of this, again, this new system, this reluctance to new system. Maybe over here we can look at Lewin's unfreezing model, right? So where it all boils down to how do I make them fear the need the need for survival should increase more than any anxiety they have about learning something. So at this point, if they get this, if they are told that if you don't learn the new system, you're going to never get a promotion, you're never going to get favorably assessed, appraised, and maybe you will have to over time you will become redundant because your current skill set is no longer useful for the new regime that we have in place, right? So anything that will get people energized to looking at this change initiative as something that they should be involved in is the first stage. Okay. uh, so the second one, build a guiding team. In this case, just in the interest of time, I'll just take one of the three problems. So let's say with Arpita's problem of getting back people to the office. What does the guiding team do? That there are people who are clear about what needs to change, right? So what is the uh, uh, just hang on a second, please. Just give me 1 second. Sorry about that. Both my dogs decided to come in and disturb our class. Okay, now that I've sent them out, we can continue. All right. So, what does a guiding team do? So, this is a team. Again, a team is a, any set of two or more people, right? So, two or more people will form a team as long as they have some common goals, and there is interdependence among the team members, right? So the members. So this is a group of people who will uh, be the ones who will drive the change effort. So in Arpita's case, what I can maybe see is a few people, maybe cross-functionally drawn individuals who can sit and come up with different ways in which uh, the problems of people returning from the lockdown can be addressed, right? And so these are people who have bought in, or are very enthusiastic about how to resume this post lockdown way of working. So they're and these are also people who are well respected in the organization. So there is this uh, you know this power that they have over other people, the power of reference, where people who look up to them and say, if they're also involved in solving this problem, then I think I can buy into it, because I know I can trust them to be sensitive to our needs, and that they will do the right thing. Okay. uh, so this team is the one that is visible for others to see, in terms of what kind of change will take place.
And
Again,
also, what we are
yes,
doing is the head of the particular unit is regularly now started to come, and certain other seniors, like you're mentioning.
correct.
We as HR are also sharing, the sanitization thing, what we have done, the precautions being taken, the photographs have been shared, even carpools and alternate rosters. These are certain suggestions that have gone in. Some are, of course, quite a few are accepting, but there are still those few who are still at their hometowns where we are facing a little resistance for them to come back and join.
Right,
But
right,
it's helping that the leaders have joined and they know that people are coming back and they're regularly sitting there.
right. Good point, right? So when they start seeing leaders modeling the behaviors that are required, that builds trust in the members of the team. And you know it starts kind of working. This is part of uh, the foundational work that you will do.
Mm.
Okay. uh, get the vision right. So again, there is this shared need uh, that is felt, the urgency is created, but also there has to be clarity on what the future will look like, right? So excuse me, just hang on a bit, please. Sorry about that, folks. Okay. Um, so get the vision right. I'm apologize for my two dogs. One is 7 years old, another is 2 months old. So the two
So
month
we have
old is like hyper
And they
excited
like
about
to
everything.
study.
Yeah, I mean, she just doesn't allow any work to happen. Okay.
Which breed is that?
Uh, they're German Shepherds.
Okay, okay. My
Yeah.
favorite.
Sir, I
I
am able
also
to
have
see
two
only the
dogs.
slides. I can't see the dogs.
I have
I'm
Shih
sorry,
Tzus.
I've not turned on the camera for that. Uh, okay. Thank you for understanding. I appreciate the that you're accommodating my dogs as well in this session. Okay. So in order to be able to get to the next stage in the change process, it's important that there is a vision. The vision is clear. Okay. And there are multiple ways in which this vision can be created. One is, the top management clarifies that creates that vision and clarifies it, or it can also be something that can emerge as part of this change team that has been established, right? So they work on clarifying what the vision is, what is the pathway to accomplishing the vision, and you know, see if there are any roadblocks and what can be done to remove those roadblocks, right? Neelam asks, can these steps be applied to IR issues as well? Absolutely. You can use these steps for pretty much everything, right? And maybe I'll make a point about that in a little bit. Uh, Absolutely, you can use it in IR as well. Again, this particular slide gives you some useful indicators about what will work, what will not work, and what are some pitfalls that you will need to, be aware of. Okay, uh, so just to kind of pick one of them, it says, assuming linear or logical plans and budgets alone will guide behavior. It's not. We are all when you're dealing with human beings, we have to move beyond just the hard, cold rational facts, because people perceive, or let me frame it this way: the same set of facts can be perceived by different people differently, depending on what their perspective is and what their competence is. Also, the same individual can perceive the same set of facts differently, given at different points in time in their lives. There was maybe some things that I looked at very differently when I was in college, and then when I was working, and when I'm retired. Things can be very different. So once the first three stages of how to kind of get the ball rolling is done, right? So you create the sense of urgency, you build this team that will, help guide this change effort, and then you also have the vision that is clarified. Then you have the important task of communicating the vision, right? So this, the communicating the vision and the strategy, this is a huge activity. It is one of the more important activities uh, in the 8 stages, is the communication part. uh, it is so important that we will look at it separately again next week. The entire communication piece we will look at separately. The simple idea is that whatever vision you have in mind, right, whatever the vision that the organization has in mind, has to be communicated clearly, in a credible way, and taking into account the sensitivities of the people who will be impacted by this change, right? So if the communication is done to address all these factors, the likelihood of the organization, the employees in the organization buying into that particular change effort is going to be higher, right? So one of the things that you will have to remember in any change effort is to be aware of what people feel. Okay, so uh, only when you become aware can you do something to address it. And different people will be feel differently. You may not have the bandwidth to deal with every individual feelings, right? So that may not be practically possible, but at least you should be able to figure out who are the major pivotal employees or players who will need to be bought in, you'll need buy-in from them in order for this change to uh, take place. So for example, Neelam asked, can these steps be applied in IR issues as well? Yes. So one of the classic ways that you can get buy-in is to ensure that the trade union leaders, if assuming you have a union in your organization, is to convince the trade union leaders to your change effort. Once you do that, then they become the conduit through which the other members of the organization can start receiving their information, right? So you catch hold of these important players, influencers, who can then help you with the communication. Okay, so this is step 4. I'll quickly run through the other 4 steps, and then we will maybe look at all of them in a little detail when we come back next week. We have about 6 minutes for that. So communicating for buy-in, empowering for action, right? So now that uh, you know what change is required, who will guide the change, you have a strategy and process for communicating, and then you start empowering people to behave in different ways. So empowering over here is defined as removing barriers, giving people the authority and the responsibility to do certain things, right? So when you empower someone, it can inspire them, it can make them more positive about what is going on, and also all these things can improve the confidence levels within the group. This slide again has some useful tips on what will work, what will not work, and some common pitfalls. What will not work is that trying to remove all barriers at once in this thing, right? Uh, so the corollary of this is trying to make people do too many things at the same time. It is better to have a graduated process in which people will embrace this change, rather than having asking people to do 10 different things. Let them start with single problems, solve them, and then start building on each of them. Sixth one, create short-term wins. So this is an important step in your planning process, is to identify those aspects that can lead to some immediate wins, right? When people start seeing uh, some improvement, then they start it starts a self fulfilling kind of positive cycle. So for example, say earlier I mentioned that I've been trying to reduce weight. So if I start seeing some improvement, maybe uh, I suddenly can touch my toes, which I couldn't do earlier, or the pain that I had in my knee is not there anymore, I start feeling a little different. I say, yeah, I think I'm kind of feeling lighter, the pains have gone away. So I will continue doing all the good things that I'm doing and not revert to old habits. So short term wins help in that particular aspect. This is also called, what they say, picking the low hanging fruit. What are some immediate wins that you can do? So what are those immediate wins? So if you remember this picture from our discussion on culture, right? We said that changing beliefs and values is going to be, attitudes is going to be the hardest one. Uh, but changing behaviors, changing some, you know, the artifacts level things are going to be relatively easier. So, for example, if I'm in Neelam's case, if people are reluctant to embrace a new system, then say if I can uh, show them how uh, someone who has adopted this new system has improved productivity by say some X%, or I make some changes to the physical layout, that the new machine is much easier to work on, uh, has a better user interface, uh, reports come out fairly quickly, or whatever, anything that I can show that works has worked, can start creating this self-fulfilling positive cycle, right? So short-term wins. Step 7 is don't let up, which is keep continuing. It is you have to continue all the good work that you've done. You can't give up at the first stage where some small kind of mishap happens, or there's a setback. You can't allow setbacks to kind of hold you back. Stage 8 or step 8 is when the change sticks, which is like the refreezing stage, where all of your new behaviors become the norms. And that you do by communicating success stories of, like, say, you know uh, this change initiative that has worked really well in a particular unit. You communicate that to other units and say, like, the same thing can be replicated in a different place as well. Okay, so broadly this is the 8-step process. Next week, what we'll do is, okay, before, yeah, it's 7:30, so what I'll do is I'll just skip this particular slide and come back to it maybe next week. So next week what we'll do is, we'll wrap up, we'll complete this quarter's 8-stage change process. We'll also look at communicating change in a little more detail. We look at organization development, which we'll do in 2 parts. We'll do it, part of it, next week, and one in the final session. And also try and kind of give you an overview, a complete roadmap for the change management process. That's a slightly in a simpler format than what we've been looking at so far. What we've done until now is look at a lot of the concepts. We've looked at 2 models of change, one at the individual level, which is Lewin's model, and the organization level model of John Cotter. We will wrap John Cotter's framework next week, and also look at a complete overview of the change process, which will maybe uh, bring everything together and make it a little more meaning to all of you. All right. So with that, it's 7:30. So let me stop now, and if you have any questions, I can address it, or uh, let us again meet next week at 6 o'clock. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you, Alok. Thank you, Arun, for your help. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot. Closing down the
Thank you.
session. Right. Okay, sir. Thank you.